You can post it on our respective websites. Welcome everyone to our bi-monthly, is that right? Twice a month? So our twice monthly town hall meeting. My name's Dan Clark. We're doing this, I'm the director of the local government center at Montana State University, and we're hosting this town hall meeting in partnership with the Montana Association of Counties. As I mentioned, we'll be recording this. I have set it up to where if you would like to ask a question, you can unmute yourself. You could also write something in the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat. You could raise your hand. If you hover over your name in the participant list, you will see a hand pop up and you can press on that and that will indicate that you want to ask a question. Or you can frantically wave your hands, get our attention, and we will call on you to make your statement. So questions, comments are certainly welcome. We want to make sure everything that we discuss today is going to be clear and informative. I don't have any other announcements for this group, so I guess without further delay, I will turn the time over to Eric. Are you going to take the ball?
Sure.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Happy Friday, everybody. I see we have Chantel and Jason on as well, so we'll do a quick update. There are two topics that I'd like to cover today. A quick review of legislation of significance. There's a bunch out there, but we don't want to spend all day on the legislation part, because if you recall, the genesis of these town halls was to have a better and thoroughly vetted discussion about use of CARES Act funding in the local government reimbursement program. Well, we've gone through that cycle, but lo and behold, as of yesterday, we have a new round of stimulus funding. So I've got a slide deck and some general information that I'll share to you as the ink is drying on a roughly $207 million coming to Montana counties. There is some really good news, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But first, Commissioner Strofe, I think you're on. I'd like you to discuss a positive upcoming pending announcement that you can make.
Thanks, Eric. Eric's referring to governor's appointment position that looks like it's moving forward for myself to be appointed to the MPARA board. I expressed interest on that previously, and I see McGinley laughing hysterically here. So he realizes I talked to him after I expressed interest in it. So I'm glad that Eric's positive about this, because I'm keeping my fingers crossed that this will be a positive appointment. But it looks like confirmation hearing should be in the next week or two. It sounded like with the information I got last night.
Well, congratulations, you will do fine.
For those of you that don't recall, Commissioner McGinley was our designated county representative on the MPARA, the Montana Public Employees Retirement Administration's board. In previous administrations, we had an informal handshake agreement with the governor's office that local governments would continue to be represented on that MPARA board, because as you know, we make up just over half of the assets that they manage and just over half of the employees, both active employees and retirement employees that they service. So my request to the current administration is that we would like to make up slightly more than half of the entire board. So far we have one appointee, but we'll see where it goes from there. And it is good news. They're having a local government voice on that board will be really important for all of us. Jason, Chantel, you guys want to start with any legislation that's pressing and of need, recognizing that we're going to spend a good chunk of time on the stimulus stuff? I'll have Jason go first.
A couple things. As far as MACo bills go, we had a pretty good week. We moved 2 to the second chamber floor yesterday. 2 more should move out of local government this afternoon. Of note for next week, and I see Jason's on, or Commissioner Strofe's on, House Bill 201 is up Tuesday. I've started working that committee. It is our dispatch cities bill that adds Miles City and Sydney. I think it's going to come down to Senator Gauthiera's vote. So I don't know if we have anybody from Helena on here.
I saw Andy.
Andy, I know the unions won't like it very much, but it's a fair piece of legislation. I'd love to talk to you about it and see if you would help me out. That one will be a little tricky. House Bill 318, which is our bison bill, had its hearing. It was contentious, as all of them have been. I expect that will come out on party lines and move through the floor on a party line vote as well. And then our last one, Senate Bill 355, which is the bill brought forward by Daniels County, has been transmitted and assigned to House tax with no hearing date as yet. So the 8 on my list, they're all moving rapidly. Lots happened this week. It's spent most of my time dealing with those. And in addition to that, I don't know if Tara's on, but she and I have been working on dealing with a couple of land use bills that she didn't like. And so I inserted myself in some negotiations with Alan Olson, who is the representative from the Petroleum Association. We've come to agreement on amendments to both of those bills. And I think he gave some, and I think we gave some. I think it makes some sense. And the gist of the two bills are, he would like to see citizen-initiated zoning, in essence, be crippled or go away, in an effort to also protect his mineral owners. And I think we've allowed him to get some protection for his mineral owners without taking away the ability of folks to do citizen-initiated zoning. So I'm hoping we found a decent compromise. We gave a little, they gave a little. Those bills were picking up steam, not losing steam. So I'm hoping that we made a good move there and that he'll get those amendments on, and we'll be able to, at minimum, stand down and even possibly go in and support. We went in on House Bill 516, which is the county, which is the assessor bill. It in essence would make it so that the Department of Revenue assessors would have to make appointments with every landowner to be able to go and assess property that was had been there for more than 12 months. So the only way they could go on unannounced is if it was newly constructed in the last 12 months or sold. And it was, the fiscal note on it was 7 new FTEs. A big part of my testimony on that is if you have enough money for 7 new FTEs, I want 7 county courthouse assessor offices reopened. And so I'm hoping we can get that killed. It was not real popular in the committee, but it came across without the fiscal note on it pretty strong. So we stepped in front of it, and Revenue also had stayed out on the other side, and they stepped in front of it. So hoping to get House Bill 516 killed. If any of you have members on Senate tax, please reach out. That's it for me, Eric.
Chantel.
All right. I don't have much I really want to go over. The session is moving really, really rapidly after transmittal, which is interesting. And it's likely because those federal funds are coming down the pipeline and they want to spend some time focusing on what they're going to do with all that money and who's going to spend it and how. On that note of things moving quickly, just a request that when we send out action items, requests for action, or surveys, to please get back to us rather quickly. You're all doing really awesome so far, so thank you for that. And just a quick thing on an election bill. We have a few hanging out there. The one that's most concerning that's still hanging out there is House Bill 406, which is the Ballot Interference Protection Act rebooted. We call it BIPA 2.0. That was found unconstitutional in just before the 2020 general election. This will basically reactivate it, except for now it makes it a lot harder on the election administrators and will end up costing the counties more money. So I'll be sending out a survey to gather the information on exactly how much that's going to cost, or approximately how much that's going to cost you all, so that I can get it to the committee this go around. We opposed last time based on the cost, but things were popping out so fast that there was no time to think. It was right before transmittal. So that'll be coming your way. thinking about that bill, this is going to keep coming up again and again and again. And I think if they want this to work, it needs to be studied. It was found unconstitutional last time. It'll go back to court this time if it passes. It might be unconstitutional again. If it's not, it'll cost you money. So if worse comes to worse, I may recommend an amendment to study this issue. I don't know if that will fly, given it's a kind of a hot potato politically. So anyway, that's the big election bill hanging out there, and that's all I have for today.
What I said was thank you, Chantel. I want to talk about a couple of bills real fast, and we'll get into the new stimulus or COVID response money. House Bill 464, House Bill 464 by Representative Regier is a bill to take away local option gas tax. With all due respect to our folks from Missoula County that are on the call, this clearly came across as an attack on Missoula County. And recall back in 2017 and 19 when they were advocating for increased gas tax statewide. Through the legislative process, legislators were pretty mad by saying and pointing to the statute saying, county commissioners, if you want to raise gas taxes, you've had the ability to do it since the mid-70s and none of you have ever done it. And so lo and behold, Missoula County goes out on a limb, does an advocacy campaign, meets with their public, convinces their constituents in the middle of a worldwide global pandemic to vote and approve a gas tax, and the legislature's mad at them and wants to take it away from the rest of you. To be clear, it doesn't matter to me as your staff person whether you want to or are interested or ever would adopt a local option gas tax. We advocated against this bill because it takes away local control. It takes away one of your only funding mechanisms for infrastructure, and it takes away the voters' ability to reasonably look at ways to fund infrastructure in their communities. This isn't about Missoula County, and it isn't about any county that does or does not want to do it. It's about those three aspects of it. So the bill was opposed by the League of Cities and Towns, MACo, the Infrastructure Coalition, the Building Industry Association, the Association of Realtors, and it's going to make it out of committee and likely will pass unless you members, elected officials, do significant outreach to your members of the House and say, don't take away the public's right to vote and don't take away a local option for infrastructure investment. Somebody want to say something? Go ahead.
Me, this is Jason. So I got a little intel. I had a good conversation with Representative Fern this morning.
Yeah.
We got Logie, I think. We need to see who else he can bend, and maybe we can insert ourselves into killing that thing.
It's the House Transportation Committee. So if you have contacts there, focus on that. But I'm a little negative about this. I see it getting out of committee. And so I want you to reach out if you're interested in preserving this as an option. I want you to reach out to your House member, regardless of whether they're on the committee or not. There needs to be an overwhelming outcry if we want to keep this as a tool going into the future. If not, we're going to lose it. And again, it was even the question and answer portion of it it was almost entirely and purely anti-Missoula County, who did what the legislature was angry that nobody had done before. We have a hearing, is it next Wednesday or Thursday, on the Sheriff and Peace Officers Association Sheriff's Pay Bill. I think it's Wednesday, isn't it? Chantel, you're muted.
I think it's Thursday.
She's probably right then. The reason that I'm pointing that out is it's very similar to the gas tax bill. This is a bill that's going to pass. It came out overwhelmingly with support from the Senate committee and across the Senate floor and onto the House committee. If this is something that you're opposed to and our association is officially opposed to it, it's going to take a lot of outreach and frankly, some in-person testimony by elected officials. The sheriffs will be there en masse, they'll be there in uniform, and they'll be talking about how underappreciated and underpaid they are. But recall that this bill doesn't have an immediate impact on sheriff's pay. It will put upward pressure on sheriff's pay, but then ultimately separates them out for the base elected official pay with the discretionary increase, changes in the percentages that deputies get paid, and the automatic 1% longevity that many of you jumps through circles to make sure that the deputies get that 1% increase by doing modest adjustments to the base elected official pay. Our opposition officially is based on the provision that they inserted in this bill that allows for a discretionary increase if granted by the Board of County Commissioners. So here's for you, everybody but Fergus and Anaconda, Deer Lodge, and Butte Silverbow, your salary compensation boards make a recommendation for the base elected official salary, and then that moves forward for planning purposes and budget adoption and ratification by your Board of County Commissioners. This bill now says that after the salary compensation board does their work, then the sheriff can go and ask the commissioner for an additional increase for the sheriff's pay, which would trickle down to the deputy. So it's a procedurally it's a bad bill, and frankly our executive team and our leadership looked at it and just said, you know, we've worked for years and years and years to have some consolidated elected official pay, and a way of doing that in a meaningful manner, and this has the tendency to ruin it. If this is going to fail, we're going to have in-person and significant outreach on the House side. Somebody's asking me the bill number, and I will tell you.
Is it Senate Bill 238?
Yeah, I think so. Let me look at it. Yes, it's SB 238. Yeah, sorry for not saying the bill number. Those are the two of significance that are coming up right now. I wanted to do an update yesterday for any of our friends from the treasurer's offices on this call. SB Senate Bill 212, it was Senator Osmundson's bill that tried to do a fairly detailed and historical analysis of property tax bills. That was tabled in committee unanimously today because the treasurers did a great job of outreach and opposing that bill. I know treasurers are mad at me. I opposed the bill on behalf of MACo, but I did pretty soft opposition and made some what I thought were constructive improvements to the bill for the committee to consider. And I know the treasurers didn't like it that we were softer in our opposition than they were. There's some reasoning for that. I don't really want to get onto it in the middle of this Zoom call, but if you're an angry treasurer, feel free to reach out to me anytime you want, and I'll give you the backstory. Needless to say, excellent work on the treasurer side for reaching out, making the phone calls. And I would have lost some folding money betting that that would be tabled unanimously, but it was this morning. Any questions legislatively on anything that we discussed or anything out there that's pending?
Quick update, gravel bill has been scheduled for hearing, which is Senator Temple's bill, but it's quite a ways out. It's not till the end of the month, March 31st, but it is still alive and it is scheduled.
For folks that want an update on that gravel bill, that's the one that's going to waive both your royalty fees and your application fees. It addresses mitigation in that if you're going to locate your gravel pit, publicly owned, county permitted gravel pit outside of critical habitat, you don't have to worry about anything to do with mitigation, essentially, Jason, right? And then you'd still be subject to compensatory mitigation if you're located in an area that required compensatory mitigation in critical habitat.
If you put a gravel pit in core, what they define as a core habitat, you pay mitigation. If you locate outside of core habitat, you do not.
It's a good bill.
And then Commissioner McGinley, 9 a.m. the 16th, next Tuesday. Mr. Bryson, I have two bills up at the same time next week. Talk about it later.
Do I have to cover for you? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. One's at 8, one's at 9. So, and I don't really want to let go of either one. So we'll have to talk.
Any questions from anybody? All right, I'm going to try share screen. To me, it looked like that worked. Did that work?
Yep, we can see it.
Perfect, thank you. This is a general information sheet that I got from the National Association of Counties. They did a presentation for State Association execs yesterday, and I didn't get to participate in it because we were tied up in some legislative stuff, but it's got some good highlights on here, and I want to talk about these in general. This is all from this is the section of the state and local recovery funds from the bill that was signed yesterday afternoon. The local fiscal recovery fund in total is $130.2 billion, including local assistance and tribal consistency funding for an additional $2 billion. If you look over on that chart on the far right side, the top part, well, about halfway through, the part that's highlighted for counties is the $65.1 billion in direct aid. I want you to remember that, $65.1 billion in direct aid. There's also a component for what they're calling revenue share counties. This is public land counties. If Devlin's on, he's going to be mad at me, but this is a double PILT payment that was snuck into the bill. There's no other way to describe it. He will describe it in different terms, and he'll have probably a better justification for it. But this is a double PILT payment in a coronavirus relief fund package to the tune of $1.5 billion. And I know
On that part of that revenue sharing counties, I've been getting a lot of different stories between PILT counties and SRS counties. Is there going to be a difference, or do you know?
It's modeled after payment in lieu of taxes. They might have snuck an SRS dollar amount or so in there, but it's going to be essentially the payment, and your eligibility to receive those funds are going to be based on your percentage of federal property in your county.
So Devlin called me this morning, Commissioner. He said that the way the language in the bill came out was that Interior and Wyden's office were to work out the formulas for expending the dollars. So at this point, it's pretty wide open. And the question he had for me was, how do we get MACo and or us as a state involved in the decision on what that formula looks like? So it will come up on Monday in our 12 o'clock meeting. But it doesn't sound like, they're not just using the formula as it exists today for SRS or for PILT. So we might want to think about how we want to weigh in on that.
Here's that statement, folks. This is the one on official record from Wyden who snuck this in. It said the senator fully expects Treasury to consult with others in government who have a history in the arena of creation of this new formula, such as, and then he lists them out. They put money in here without any sideboards in order for Treasury, NACo, state county associations, the ONC counties in Oregon, all to come up with a better understanding of how this money can be used. It's going to hit you as general governmental purpose money, unlike your COVID money, which will have some sideboards on it. So we'll see how that works out. There have been questions about the formula and the distribution of the formula. The easiest way to explain it is basically population-based. There are discrepancies in the population-based distribution for counties that hit a certain percentage or certain population thresholds. They're using the community development block grant formula in essence for the distributions. If you see the $65.1 billion in direct federal aid to all counties is all based on population. Important to note in this is that the bill expects that Treasury is going to make the first distribution of payments within 30 or 60 days of enactment. This money is going to come fast. And as I said before, it's about $207 million. It's a little over $207 million just for Montana counties alone, half of which will be dispersed within 60 days. And Treasury will get to issue the guidelines for how the money can be spent. It's not written in stone in the bill. So we're going to be waiting for Treasury to get caught up with what authorized expenditures are going to be as we move forward. This is where it gets a little complicated in the distribution formula. Populations with at least 50,000 got a chunk of money. Populations below 50,000 got a chunk of money. All that. Let's see how it's going to work. Hopefully you guys received what we'd sent out with the preliminary distribution formula county by county. That information is available. You can go right now and see exactly how much you're slated to get each county in the US, but the spreadsheet we sent out allowed you to scroll through and look at Montana and find out what your distribution is going to look like. I want to talk about some allowable uses that we know are going to be available in these funds based on the record and the intent of the bill. And there's some problems with this. Was somebody trying to talk?
Chilcott. Hey, I got a question on where they get their population numbers. I think, are they using the 2010 census numbers?
My understanding is it's 2010 adjusted up, so they're not using the new census because they can't, but they do the 2010 with the baselines adjusted up.
And then the other question, thank you for that. The other question is when we get the this money sent to us within 60 days and they don't have full guidelines out yet, they send us a bunch of money. What do we do with it? I mean, I don't know where the hell we put it.
I have some recommendations. Let me get to that because there's some preliminary guidance that'll help you. And then I'll try and answer your question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Lewis and Clark, Greg.
Always
Yeah.
helpful, Andy.
Eric, I have a question. This is Jerry.
Go ahead.
And you guys sent out on MACo and it had the county breakdown. Is that pretty accurate of what is actually going to come? Because I looked at it.
There were no changes when the House and the Senate both voted. My understanding is, as was presented to you in that spreadsheet as preliminary, is exactly what will be distributed now that the ink is dried.
Okay.
Assuming the calcs were done right.
Okay, thanks.
So allowable uses for recovery funds. The general sideboards from a 10,000 foot level, or you're going to be able to pay for response or mitigation costs due to the outbreak. So let's talk about what Montana did with the previous version of CARES Act funding. Montana was not unique, but it wasn't universally created that the states receiving CARES funding created reimbursement programs for their local governments. You recall back that in original CARES, 45% was supposed to be distributed down to local governments, but that 45% was supposed to be basically unencumbered. Montana didn't want to do that for some really good reasons and maybe some not so great reasons, and they instead created a reimbursement program. So once you received the funds from the state of Montana, you had proved a justifiable use. This money is coming as a direct allocation to you, which means that you're going to be, you counties are going to be responsible for how you spend the money, and if there's any misappropriations of the funds, likely subject to payback of the funds. And so Greg's point is really important. If you don't know what the rules are, but you're going to get the money deposited, let's be cautious about what you're going to spend it on until we have some better guidance on what the program rules would look like. But this is not a reimbursement program. Under the Montana system with CARES, you weren't allowed to set up things like revolving loan funds or do property tax mitigation programs or do anything that wasn't directly COVID-19 response costs, and thus you would request reimbursement for. This money is different. So you're going to be allowed to look at small business intervention programs, nonprofit aid, aid to impacted industries such as tourism, travel, and hospitality. As noted in that first bullet point, these are only examples, and you're not limited to these activities that are listed for discussion purposes. It's going to be the Treasury guidance that ultimately is going to put the sideboards on what you can use these monies for. But think about one of the things we advocated for was reasonable property tax relief for COVID-19 impacted businesses and residences. You counties, county by county, will, I believe, have the ability to set up programs with eligibility criteria to do some mitigation for property taxes for businesses that were closed, partially closed, subject to quarantine, had population limitations placed on them. There will be some flexibility to do things like that with these new funds. And unlike in the past where the state did the intervention, their version of paycheck protection, put money into tourism, put money into hospitals. This money, you'll be able to do that in your community. So that's one of the aspects that we really need to wait for additional Treasury guidance before you get too excited about how you can spend the money, because you don't want to have to pay this back. One of the things that's problematic for us in Montana, that third bullet point talks about making necessary investments in water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. There's a big emphasis on broadband in this package, both with the money that's coming to the state, the money that's coming directly to local governments, and separate money that is specifically for broadband. purposes, to be able to enhance internet connectivity, especially in rural communities, to be able to allow for work from home. That's essentially what this comes down to. The mobility of our workforce has been really important during this shutdown for the last 12 months. So investment in broadband is an allowable use, specifically allowable, and comes in various forms. In Montana, local county governments are not allowed to invest in broadband infrastructure to create your own internet service providers. We have worked and we continue to try to find bills that allow for investment in broadband in partnership with the private providers. There's a section of code that says, it's an anti-competitive section of code that says you can't be involved in broadband or internet service provision. So we want to have that section modified to allow you to invest in partnership with the private sector. We had a bill, it wasn't our bill, but there was a bill by Representative Cordon that wanted to change and gut that section entirely, and it was opposed by the industry. But we quietly worked with a committee member to put an amendment on there that knowing this money was coming and knowing that broadband was going to be an allowable use, we wanted an amendment to the bill that allowed for investment in infrastructure. So the example that was discussed among our executive committee is if you're doing a road project in Cascade County and you have the opportunity and the money, bury some fiber in the intersections and in that road project. So when connectivity comes and the private provider wants to hook up to the subdivision that's coming down the road, that fiber is already in the ground. You're not allowed to do that right now, and our amendment would have allowed you to do that. So when somebody comes along, you could lease the fiber, or you could invest in partnership with somebody who wants to extend services where they currently don't exist. That bill passed second reading, and then between second and third reading, somebody got concerned about it just before transmittal, and that bill died. I have reached back out to the internet service provider lobbyists, from the big guys in Spectrum to the small little telcos, and their coordinated efforts to try and get a new bill that will have to make a revenue bill that'll make this an allowable use of the funds. If not, Montana will be one of the only, if not the only state that won't allow their local governments to invest in broadband. You won't have the legal ability to do it if we don't find a bill. And I keep trying to tell the lobbyists for the broadband providers that they're kicking themselves and giving away what's essentially going to be free money in partnerships with local government to provide paying customers access to their services. So if we don't get a bill, they're all on notice. And if we do get a bill, I'm going to ask for help in advocating for it so we can make sure that this can be an allowable use of the funds. That fourth bullet point talks about your ability to transfer it to private nonprofit organizations, public benefit corporations, for passenger, cargo, special purpose, or state, local government. Think of your economic development agencies out there as this being an opportunity to invest in a bunch of different ways for economic activity in your communities. You will be specifically allowed to pass this money on to those types of organizations. You're not going to be required to, but you'll be allowed to. I'm not going to get into the premium pay stuff. If you ask for our guidance and recommendation, I want some hard and fast rules from Treasury before you start talking about how you're going to authorize premium pay in any way, shape, or form for the private sector, for a nonprofit community, or for your own employees. I really encourage you to stay away from that until we get better guidance from Treasury. And this is important, and the state of Montana are specifically prohibited from offsetting net tax revenue. Let me interpret this. They are telling the states, do not cut taxes and backfill the loss of revenue with these funds. Do not cut taxes and backfill. That's what they're saying. Can't use this money for any pension fund. So you can't just dump the money en masse into, say, the Montana Public Employees Retirement Administration pension fund. And if you fail to comply with the guidelines that haven't been issued, you will be required to pay back the Treasury. The total expenditure deadline is out to December 31st of 2024. And remember, the payment is intended to come in 2 different batches. The first tranche to the county is not later than 60 days after enactment. Again, we don't have the rules on how you spend it. And the second payment no earlier than 12 months after the first payment. So your first batch has to get you through the first 12 months. I'm going to stop there. See if there's any questions.
Not a question, but I hope they loosen up them rules a little bit, because the amount that's coming, if it's COVID related, it's going to be tough to spend.
I have a feeling that the Treasury guidance this time, first of all, I think there were 6 different versions of Treasury guidance under CARES 1 or 2 or 3, whatever we're calling the last round. I have a feeling that we're going to probably get a couple sets of Treasury guidance, but it's not going to be that elastic. They're going to be very broad. Generally, anything that you can have a nexus to COVID, you'll be able to spend, and then larger, broader categories about economic activity. So I agree with you, Commissioner. I think the categories are going to be much broader, but I still worry about the accountability portion of it. Other questions?
Jason or Eric, would this be a possibility of, like, cell towers? Because, especially with the broadband, there were parts of the county that had broadband, like Hardin, where the courthouse is. They don't have broadband. In fact, the reservation has broadband from the last recovery year. So that's how we have it down there. But when you get up to this side, there's no broadband. So like some folks were taking home like Verizon jetpacks, school districts were giving those out. I wonder if we could, if that's in the guidelines.
I believe those will be allowable expenses. There's going to be a broad category of infrastructure investment, and they've already called out broadband, water, and sewer. So it's, think about the nexus between upgrading your sewer system and COVID. Maybe there is one. I'm not sure there is one, but infrastructure investment is going to be one of the allowable expenses. So I do think things like cell towers, enhanced communication, interoperability, we still have a pretty significant deficit in our interoperability needs across the state just for emergency communications. I believe all those will be allowable expenses. I think Congress is already wrestling as of today.
Speaking of broadband at the courthouse.
Did we lose you?
Yep.
Yes is the answer. I won't repeat what I said, but I think they're going to be a broad category of infrastructure investment because they've already called out water and sewer. And then on the heels of this, Congress is now starting to negotiate a package that is infrastructure. So I believe it's going to be allowable. Things like cell towers and connectivity is going to be allowable in this, and look on the heels of this, because I think there's going to be a significant push to get money out for infrastructure on the back of this as well.
So for instance, bridges are not listed. We're going to advocate pretty hard to get bridges to be an eligible infrastructure expense. The hesitation I have, Commissioner Reelbird, with the cell towers is it goes sort of along the same lines as broadband. And we got to make sure that as a county, you have the authority to deploy your resources to that. So even though the Treasury says you can do it, if state law does not allow it, then we got a roadblock we're going to try and get over between now and the end of before they sign die.
Eric, I have a question. This is Jerry.
I see Jerry, then we'll go McGinley, then Hunthausen.
Okay, I just interrupted. My question is, can counties share with cities? Like, can we help Jordan out here in Garfield County?
You can, but all incorporated municipalities have their own direct allocation.
So we can't help them out. Sure.
You can, and you can partner. And there's one other thing that I wanted to talk about, but let's get McGinley and then Hunthausen, and then I'll try and share screen again.
Okay.
I like Jason's comment about bridges and infrastructure, that level there, because these poor people in Red County with all our bad bridges if they catch COVID, they can't get to town to the hospital. So there is a direct restriction there.
You're already selling it.
Question about timing. So what about spending it back to January 1, where we may have incurred COVID costs that are eligible after the CARES Act was complete? Is that eligible? One question. And the other question is, I'm just making this up, but say we had a water sewer project that because of its timing and all of the process you got to get everything in the ground, it goes beyond 2024. If you've committed the money, do we know those kind of answers yet?
I'm gonna make two assumptions on the first part. Because of the way this money is being distributed out there, and it's in the first easy bucket for you to spend it on is mitigation costs and COVID-19. There's also going to be a provision that allows for revenue replacement. So I'm going to tell you absolutely yes. Costs incurred that you weren't reimbursed from another source in the past are going to be eligible expenses from probably back early on last year up through today. There'll likely be Treasury guidance that says you can't have double billed for certain things. So the accounting of that's going to be tricky, but yes is going to be the short answer to the first one. And your second question.
Big infrastructure project, you're following the guidelines, trying to get a sewer project in the ground, but it's not completed by 2024 because of all the whatever you got to go through to get that done. You know, it's a process.
So you remember that on Montana's reimbursement program, they're the ones that established the hard dates. There was a hard date in terms of obligating funds by the 30th of December, but U.S. Treasury gave discretion for funds being obligated, not spent. I expect that the U.S. Treasury and these funds will talk about obligated as well. It was Montana that said cash out the door on the last round. Treasury always in the previous round had given discretion for you having obligated the funds, not actually spent them. So I think that you'll have that same provision in this round.
Okay, so one more really fast one. Say we partner with our local economic development corp and we put some money in their lap for people that as sewer lines get extended, people to hook in, those kinds of things. Would that be obligated? I mean, if they have it sitting in a fund for people to use or to apply for, those kinds of things, if we obligated it to them, I'm assuming that might fit as well. I don't know.
It might. One of the
things,
things, Commissioner, we've talked about is your ability with your economic development agencies to set up things like revolving loan funds that might have criteria for waiving repayment, which will definitely go past those dates, or even have it cycle back in and then become kind of in the possession of the economic development agency. So those monies could be lent out, spent, come back in, but when they come back in, they come back unobligated. We need Treasury guidance to clarify that, but I believe there's going to be opportunities.
Great. Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about. Thank you.
A couple points, Eric. One, back to Commissioner Collins. If you obviously you don't have the money yet, but if you start thinking about giving that money to another local government, when you hand that money over, you need to make sure they spend it according to the guidelines, because ultimately you're on the hook for it. Same way the state passing the money in the last set left the state on the hook for it. You'll need to ensure that the county's protected in the way those dollars are utilized by the town. That's my first comment. And then my next comment is the CYA for Eric and I. We don't have any Treasury guidance at this point. We have some language in the bill, but we don't have any Treasury guidance. So don't sign the contract on a project that goes out past 2024 yet, Commissioner Hunthausen, please. Let's take a look at the guidance. I think Eric's probably on the right track, but given that that's 4 years out, I hope that they have some latitude, but I won't be surprised given that length of time that they might have it be a harder date than the last set. So I hope you all will be a little bit patient as we get and digest the federal guidance and pass that on to you in hopefully better layman's terms as to how you can use it. But we're sort of guessing based on the actual legislation what Treasury will do when they do issue guidance. And if last time's any indication, there will be multiple iterations of that.
In other words, you're saying put the money in the bank, draw interest.
Well, so along those lines of cooperation with other entities, I point you to House Bill 632. And if you can see the share screen, this is what it says. This is from the state of Montana. There's an appropriation of another $409 million beginning July 1st of 2020 to allocate to local government. This is not your money. This is another $409 million that the state wants to spend on local governments responding to the public health emergency, covering costs incurred, replacing revenue, addressing negative economic impacts, and that the appropriations are authorized to continue through into the 2023 biennium. So folks, most of the time when we give you legislative updates, it's about the state trying to take money. This is maybe being a little sarcastic, but the state trying to take money from you. This is a bill where they're trying to allocate a portion of their money to do partnership projects with local governments to the tune of an additional $409 million.
So Eric and Jason, what I've gotten out of this so far is Greg can give us their money as long as we spend it according to the guidelines. That's great, Chilcott. There you go.
I think that's correct.
And Eric, are we sure that that's not just the local government's piece in the appropriation to pass it through?
I am following up with Budget Director Almy to make sure that they're not pretending that the money that the federal government is giving directly to the state or giving directly to the counties is somehow coming through the state. I asked that question specifically, and when I get an answer, I'll let you know.
Okay, and I will tell you, either way, the conversations I'm having in the halls are centered around them using some of their dollars in a program that would allow local governments to use some of the state share for infrastructure. So I'm hoping that that's that $400 million, and that's in addition to the $200 million that the counties are getting, and that's kind of what they've earmarked for that. But either way, they do intend to have some of those dollars that are state allocated going to the local level for infrastructure.
And Eric, there, Andrew from Missoula County has got a question.
Andrew, fire away.
Yeah, Eric. Yeah, I just wanted to give you a little or what I heard anyway for the pension fund. It wasn't just the state dumping money in to fill some of the hole of the unfunded liability for the pension fund, but in fact, these dollars cannot even be used on salaries where the salary deduction is going into a pension fund. That portion of the salary has to be excluded from the use of these funds. So the actual deduction for pension can't be allowed as well.
I'll again defer to further Treasury guidance. I think in most cases that's correct. The exception I would say is that there might be new positions created that are authorized to be funded, and the full personnel costs might be eligible, but we have to wait. They're intentionally trying to avoid this money looking like bailouts for or poorly managed pension funds.
So Eric, we talked about briefly the rebate for property tax or something here when we first saw this come out. And when you were talking about the states not being allowed to do any, trying to think of the word you used, reduce any tax.
Yeah.
But that section specifically talks about states. Is that you're anticipating that's going to apply to local government as well? And see, I'm trying to use the money for our taxpayers, where Hunthausen is trying to find the edges he can work in to do what Hunthausen does.
So counties don't set, well, if you did, this is the way the prohibition is supposed to work as I understand it. You couldn't not levy what you were eligible to levy and offset that by paying yourself from the stimulus to make ends meet for what you could levy. So you couldn't hold back 100 mils and then pay yourself so you give everybody a property tax break. You could set up a program that had some eligibility criteria that showed in COVID-19 impacted properties could receive a portion, a rebate in essence, or a direct payment for them to make your property tax payments with these funds. That, I believe, will be an allowable expense, but that's some of the clarification we'll need when we get the first round of Treasury guidance. I think, Commissioner, we can do exactly what we wanted to do with the last round with these funds based on the I understand it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Other questions?
So Dan Ellison has a question.
Eric, Dan is here today on behalf of Jefferson County. And when you showed your first document there, when you shared your screen with the colorful boxes and the big dollar amounts and some limited guidance that's available to date, is that document available on the MACo website, or is there another location that that the treasurers and others clerks can go to view that document that you used for your first talking points.
I will make the entire document available so long as Chantel promises me she can get it on the website.
I
sounds great.
promised.
For
I promise, but
clarification,
maybe
who
not
produced
today.
that document?
It is a NACo document.
Not a treasury document.
Okay, that's good. Just if there's a way to access that, that would be really helpful. Thanks very much.
Chantel, when will you have it up and ready?
I will try to have it up probably not today, but this weekend for sure.
Thanks a lot.
Absolutely.
I don't see anything in the chat or any other hands that are raised. Does anyone have other questions or comments?
I'll do one more informational update. We've been approached by Senator Tester and his staff. He wants to join us on one of these. And of course, we'll always allow any of our delegation to do that. I think he told us that he was unavailable today, so I would expect him to Zoom in with us in 2 weeks. And we also have a Minnesota County Commissioner who's running for NACo second VP that has asked to join us for an introduction, since none of you, even if you could have gone to a NACo conference, none of you were able to meet any of the candidates, and she'd like a couple minutes to talk to you. So I apologize in advance. You're a captive audience and you're going to get a bit of a sales pitch from a county commissioner in Minnesota. Joe Cutt's already mad at me for that.
So real quick on that revenue sharing county money, when's it going to hit the county coffers? Any idea?
I don't know. I think there's going to be a separate set of Treasury guidance on that. Although I don't think it's going to be as detailed. I don't know what the timeframes are for the release of those funds.
I'll have to figure out the distribution formula before we'll have a timeline on them issuing the check.
That was late in the game, and I don't think they had their sideboards figured out on it, let alone disbursement or formula.
Correct.
30,000.
I think we have an opportunity to influence that a little bit if we play it right.
All right, the show is yours, Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. Appreciate everyone's participation and attendance. As I'd mentioned at the beginning, this has been recorded, and we will, as soon as it gets rendered, I will send it along to Chantel, and I'm assuming you're able to post that on your website as well. So for those that wanted to participate that were unable to, then they can always watch the video later on. So is there anything else for the good of the order before we close out this this town hall meeting? Anyone have any other questions or comments, concerns? All right. Hey, well, everyone, you have a good, safe weekend, and we'll see you in another 2 weeks.